that is going to happen. And it is because of the feedback we got from the borrowers in this ecosystem. Number 3, many borrowers have told us 14 days is too short a period for us to pay back. Can you consider doubling that term loan, that term? Again, today, under the bridge loan, we have increased the time you will take to pay from 14 days to 30 days. And you can continue from there. The 4th thing we have done today, again, is to have a conversation about what borrowers have asked us. What happens to our savings? As you are aware, when you borrow in the hustler fund ecosystem, saving is mandatory. And saving is mandatory because in Kenya, we have a serious gap in borrowing. It is one thing that I made a commitment to this country that we must rethink our borrowing. And I am very happy with the progress we are making in matters borrowing. Not just in hustler fund, but globally as a nation. Those of you who may want to know is that our savings as a percentage of GDP has always been in the region of between 8 and 12%. Other countries in our category are in the region of 25%, others 40%. China, for record, is at 55%. And when you have money that is saved, if you have a good saving culture, then you build a big enough resource of resources that can be used for borrowing. It begins to give you long-term money, patient money that can be borrowed, and it helps to bring down interest rates. Just for context, let me tell you where we are. Our National Social Security Fund has saved in 60 years 320 billion in 60 years, because we have been saving on average 200 shillings per person. And you remember I had a very serious quarrel about it. Of course, I have since pushed the needle. I discussed with the stakeholders. We managed to negotiate the court cases that were in court, and we finally have a new arrangement. Today, every employee saves 6% of their salary, and every employer adds another 6%. That will eventually be money belonging to the employee. Do you know what has happened? The 320 billion we have saved in 60 years, we are actually going to double that money in 4.5 years. That is the kind of difference that savings is going to make. I just wanted to make that point so that I can come back to savings in the hustler fund. We have 3.5 billion shillings in savings under the hustler fund situation. Many borrowers have been asking us, who is managing this money? What interest am I going to get for the savings I have on my hustler fund account? Now we have worked with World Bank and other development partners. Now KNEST is going to be the arm that is going to be investing the savings in the hustler fund ecosystem. And last year, we negotiated with banks. We got T-bill rate -3. With now KNEST, there will be no -3. All the borrowers will get T-bill rate. If T-bill rate is 11, you will get 11% on your savings. If it goes to 12, you get 12%. It is also an opportunity for those of you who have little money somewhere in an account where banks are paying you 3%, 4%. It is time you move that to the Hustler Fund and you will get 11%. It is good information. Whatever you do with it is up to you. So, we have now made the decision that savings are going to be handled by Kenyans, and it will strictly be invested in government security so that there is no chance whatsoever of any loss or of any money being misappropriated. So these are the 4 or 5 things that we have today made a decision about. Increase the limits by up to 3 times. We have enhanced the term from 14 to 30 days. We have now a credit score for each and every one of the borrowers, which can be used in the financial sector, not just within the Hustler Fund space. And number 3, we have had a conversation and a decision on savings. So this is fundamental. And let me also say this. Of the 1.5 million people who today will have their credit limits enhanced, the highest being from 50,000 to 150,000, there is another 4 million borrowers who must be listening to me this evening. These 4 million borrowers have maybe an outstanding amount. Maybe they have not paid on time. Maybe they have exceeded, instead of 14 days, they are at 45 days, or they are at 30 days. If they pay, these 4 million borrowers, if they pay their outstanding, the window for them to be moved to the bridge loan, which then doubles or triples their credit limit, exists. So the 4 million people out there who have not paid their money, you have a chance. We are going to assess you. Once you pay, we are going to assess you for 2 months, and then we will graduate you to the bridge loan. We want many to come on board. As you are aware, the whole Hustler Fund intervention was to remove the penalization, the blacklisting, the condemnation of people, but to give them a chance to improve on their credit rating. And that is what we intend to achieve. So that is one item that I wanted us to have a conversation about. I will take a few questions on that story as soon as I'm done. The second issue that I want us to have a conversation this evening is about jobs and employment. And we are all aware that close to 1 million people young people enter the job market in Kenya. We also know that currently approximately 200 to 250,000 get a chance to be absorbed. And we have about 700,000 people who get into the job market, and they have, to do one thing or another in the informal sector. And therefore it is important for us to think as a country on what do we do with the 700,000 people who walk out of college, walk out of school, walk out of university, and there is no ready employment for them. Again, this is something that I spoke to and have a plan about in our manifesto. And I can say confidently that for the first time, we have a demonstrable plan on how we are going to create jobs. Creating jobs is no longer an exercise in guesswork. We must be deliberate, we must be intentional, we must have a plan. And this evening, I want to tell you about 4 of the interventions that are currently underway that I committed to the people of Kenya in terms of how we are going to create jobs. Number 1 is labor mobility. And I have my team here. They are going to, I'll give them a chance to tell us what kind of progress are we making in that space of labor mobility. I have had occasion to personally sign off some of the bilateral labor agreements. I was in Germany with the German Chancellor. We've signed off with another 3 or 4 countries. As I talk to you, my team at the Ministry of Diaspora and the Ministry of Labor are working on 19 additional labor agreements, bilateral labor agreements with different countries. That's 1. And we're going to discuss the numbers shortly. Number 2 is the whole program around housing. How many jobs are we creating for engineers, for architects, for quantity surveyors, for electricians, for plumbers, and a whole lot of them in that space. Number 3 is digital jobs. What are we doing in the digital job space? What are we doing with Jitume? What are we doing with Ajira program? What are we doing with all our TVETs? What are the numbers looking like? What is the 1,450 ICT hubs we are working with members of parliament to construct? How is that going to look? And shortly, we're going to share with you the numbers. And number 3, or is it number 4? The whole space around industrialization, manufacturing. What is it that we are doing? Why have we rolled out 47 county aggregation industrial parks? Why have we rolled out 6 new special economic zones? What are we doing with our manufacturing sector? Why have we put in place a policy framework that stops us from importing all manner of things? How do we produce steel locally? How do we produce cement locally? How do we take advantage of our young people and stop importing furniture? How do we, those are some of the policy interventions that we have passed through Parliament to build the capacity around our manufacturing, our industrial space. It is the reason, for example, that we put a levy on import of clinker. And as a result, we are producing clinker today in Kenya, we are exporting. Many companies that had closed down have now stepped up. It is the reason why steel, for example, I was in West Pokot a few months ago when we were setting up a huge plant for manufacture of clinker that will employ close to 5,000 people. Last weekend, I was in Taita Taveta. We have been, we have been mining iron ore and exporting in raw form. For the first time, we now are going to have a steel manufacturing facility in Kenya, and we will not be exporting raw materials of iron ore. We will be using it to produce steel here in Kenya. Again, because we have provided policy interventions. And our end game being creating jobs. It must be, as I said, deliberate, it must be intentional, and it must be something we can account for. So I could say one more thing, if you allow me, on BPO. On Wednesday, I will be signing into law the business bill that has just gone through Parliament, that now is going to provide a different space where we will now have the opportunity to encourage more companies. Many of you talk about Philippines and how they have managed to build their economy using BPO framework, and India for that matter. What has happened to us is that the law was very restrictive, and the law did not recognize BPOs as a job-creating enterprise. But the law we just passed through Parliament now will encourage more companies. And I'm told in our midst we have Somersos. Are they here? Right. Those people there were taken to court and they had real trouble. They really bothered me. Now I can report to you that we have changed the law. So nobody will take you to court again on any matter. Right? And I'm talking about Somersos because they will tell us how many people they employ and what kind of trouble they were going through. And they were about to relocate most of their operations to Uganda because many of us were giving them trouble and we didn't have the correct space. Thank you very much, good people. I'll give you a chance to say something later. And many other companies. So these are the two things I thought we should have a conversation about. And I will take some of your questions on these two items. I don't know whether we do it sequentially or we do it, maybe we do it sequentially. Let's start with Hustler Fund. I will take some questions.